For the first part of wakefulness and sleep is the rhythms of waking and sleeping. This tackles the cycles and processes and natural patterns of our body. It includes our body clock, disruption to it, relation to light, and the hormones responsible for it, and more so. Our body, whether it is animals or humans, it naturally produces its own internal rhythms of wakefulness and sleep, known as the endogenous rhythms, meaning it is generated from within. It is naturally produces, yung process or cycle na yun is naturally na napoproduce ng katawan natin. Kaya nga siya generated from within. It is our internal think system. Sabi dito, early psychologists, especially yung mga radical behaviorists, they resisted this idea. Ino-oppose nila yun kasi in mid-90s, 1900s, they believe all behavior was directly caused by external stimuli. Like yung mga light, temperature, yun yung parang cause ng behavior natin. However, sabi ni Kurt Richner 1922, na-provide niya yung evidence that the body generates its own cycle of activity, meaning generated nga siya from within and naturally inside of us. Kaya nga may mga animals utilizing these rhythms to anticipate environmental changes necessary for survival. Example dito ay yung mga animal na nagmamigrate from different places kasi hindi na feasible yung recent places nila for that specific season. Here is the types or two types of endogenous rhythms. Number one is the endogenous circa-annual rhythm, meaning it lasts about a year, with its Latin word circum for about and annum for year. Kaya nga about a year, it is annual kasi year siya, yung cycle nun is per year. It governs seasonal changes like winter, autumn, summer, and spring sa ibang bansa. Sa atin naman, kasi since dalawa lang yung season sa atin, which is yung summer and yung tag-ulan, kaya yun yung parang cycle natin in seasons. One example here, as stated kanina, cage migratory birds become restless and fly to north in spring. Kaya sila nagpa-fly to north in spring kasi tapos na yung winter. And if winter approaches, they fly to south kasi hindi nila kayang ma-survive yung weather or yung season ng winter kasi hindi naman nila kaya yung habitat nila doon. Kaya lumilipit sila depending on the season in order to survive. Sa atin naman, I think one example is in summer, siguro magbe-beach tayo or like LU, ganun, or Boracay. But during Christmas season, magbabagyo or Tagaytay kasi yun yung parang cycle na sa atin eh. For the number 2, endogenous circadian rhythm, it lasts about a day. From its Latin word circum for about and dies or dies for day, meaning about a day. It governs sleep-wake cycle, kumbaga yun yung cycle ng pagtulog natin at pagising and kung ano yung mga activity na ginagawa natin within that day. One example here is increased alertness during an all-nighter as morning approaches. Ang responsible dito is the posterior area of the cerebral cortex. It correlates with its rhythm since yung posterior area ng cerebral cortex natin, it is responsible for our awareness and alertness. Kaya nga, sa umaga, nagiging alert tayo kasi sinisignalan tayo ng brain yung morning, kasi morning na yun, external stimuli is nagsisignal na sa brain natin, kaya tayo nagiging alert kahit wala tayong tulog. For the human circadian rhythm, it is robust but difficult to significantly alter. Meaning kaya siya robust kasi it is strong and consistent. Kahit may external stimuli, it is still consistent and hindi siya, it is difficult to change or adjust quickly kasi nga consistent siya and yun yung nakasanayan nung katawan natin. Study shows our free running cycle is slightly shorter or longer than 24 hours, meaning yung a little shorter than 24 hours is tend to get sleepy and wake up a bit early each day. While yung 24 hours, longer than 24 hours naman is sleeping late and then waking up a bit later each day. Kaya nga, even without clocks or sunlight, sinusunod pa rin ng katawan natin yung free-running cycle na yun, which is yung natural rhythm na nakasanayan nito. Hindi lang yung sleep and wake ang nai-influence ng human circadian rhythm. It also influences many physiological variables such as body temperature and mood. It also influences what happens inside our body within that 24-hour cycle. For body temperature, it fluctuates from its low near 36.7% degrees Celsius during the night to its peak near 37.2 Celsius in the late afternoon. And for its mood, people consistently report their mood pleasant around 5 p.m. and their least pleasant mood around 5 a.m. even when kept awake for 30 consecutive hours. This also influences the hormones release and any biological process na nangyayari inside of us. For setting and resetting the biological clock, although our endogenous circadian rhythm run close to 24 hours, they require a daily adjustment by the Zeitgeber to stay in sync. Zeitgeber is the time giver, meaning it is the external cues that helps or set or reset our body's internal clock. Parang these cues, yun yung nag-keep sa sleep and wake cycle natin to align with that 24-hour day. Light naman is the dominant Zeitgeber. Parang it is the time teller kasi yung sunlight, it signals our brain kung if it is daytime or nighttime. Other Zeitgebers include exercise, arousal, meals, or temperature. But those are considered only as secondary Zeitgebers. The weakness of secondary factors is evident for people working in the constant darkness of an Antarctic winter and astronauts in orbit, experiencing alternating 45-minute periods of light and darkness, which lead to impaired alertness. Next here is yung impact ng light and social schedules. So, yung light has a huge influence in social schedules. One example here is transition to daylight, saving time in spring, leaving most people poorly rested. Further evidence shows from a study in Germany, sunrise occur earlier in the east than in the west. So people in eastern Germany awaken about half an hour earlier than those in the west. So as based on this figure, the more na nagiging napa-east yung location, the more na mas nagiging mababa yung midpoint. Meaning, yung sleeping schedule nila is earlier than those in the west. Kasi, mas nauuna yung ilaw sa kanila which sets in their mind na pag sikat ng araw, gising na sila. Kaya nga stated here, sun time competes with social time. Also, pala midpoint is in between sleeping duration. So if late yung sleep mo, late din yung midpoint mo. Or same na, if maaga, maaga din. Next here is the blindness challenge. Basically, it says na blind individuals, they rely on secondary zeitgebers, yung mga internal environmental cues sa kanila, which are the noise, temperature, meals, or any other activities kasi wala silang light cues which yung nagsasabi sa kanila if it is a day or night. Kaya nga, these cycles drift out of sync, meaning hindi sila in sync, hindi sila naka-same dun sa normal na circadian rhythm. And yung pag-drift out of sync nila leads to insomnia at night and daytime sleepiness. And also, more than half of blind people report frequent sleep problems. It is because they cannot detect light and they don't rely on it. Kaya nga, yung hindi nagsisynchronize yung natural light-dark cycle sa kanila kasi nga, hindi nila nadedetect yung light. Next is the disruption of rhythms. This occurs when our internal clock fights with the external world, and then we face problem. When there's sudden change dun sa cycle na nakasanayan natin, hihirapan yung katawan natin na mag-adjust from that sudden change kasi hindi naman yun yung nakasanayan natin. Kaya nga, we often face problems with parang to cope up with that cycle. First example of disruption of rhythm is jet lag and circadian disruption. It is caused by crossing time zones. Siyempre, minsan pag kami lumilipad tayo from different places, 'di ba? Diba yung time zone, nabibigla yung katawan natin kasi hindi yun yung cycle ng body clock natin sa cycle nung time na yon. Kaya the symptoms includes daytime sleepiness, depression, and poor concentration kasi hindi nakaset yung cycle natin dun sa time na yon, hindi siya sang-ayon. Kaya parang yung mind natin is still in that parang cycle na nakasanayan natin. Kaya nga tuwing may lumilipad pa abroad or like nag-iibang bansa, 'di ba? Marami tayong makakarinig na feel nila na jet lag, yung may jet lag sila kasi nga, hindi yun yung body clock na nakasanayan nila. Also, it is easier to adjust when traveling to West kasi following them to the phase delay of their rhythms than when traveling to East which requires a difficult phase advance. Meaning pagka sa East, mas advanced. Like nauna na yung cycle nila sa cycle mo compared dun sa West na nauna yung cycle mo sa cycle nila. Meaning, kaya easier to travel to West kasi it is easier for our body to extend the day. I mean, mas kaya ng katawan natin na magising pa kesa sa to shorten it or matulog ng maaga. Yung mga frequent travelers, they have smaller hippocampus and memory. They also have memory impairments kasi nga, the stress of repeated adjustment elevates the adrenal hormone cortisol which can damage the neuron in the hippocampus. Di ba nga, yung hippocampus natin is for memory. Kaya hindi nakaka-retain or like weak yung memory nila kasi due to the stress caused by the cortisol level nila. Example here is a study on flight attendants who frequently cross 7 or more time zones with short breaks found that they have smaller than average hippocampus volumes and showed memory impairments. Next, second example is the challenges of shift work. People with irregular sleeping schedule often find their sleep duration dictated by when they go to bed, sleeping only briefly during the morning and or early afternoon. Kaya shorten yung sleep duration nila is nakadepende yung tulog nila to when they go to bed. Second, night shift workers adjust completely because they feel groggy, experiencing more accidents, and their body temperature continues to peak while they are sleeping during the day. This incomplete adjustment is partly because of the artificial lighting, 150 to 180 lux light, lux is light and is only moderately effective. Kaya nga, it is best to adjust in or sleep in dark room sa umaga and then work under bright light sa gabi. However, long-term shift to work is associated to worse cognitive performance. Last example is the morning and evening person. Basically, ito yung mga morning person, yung mga maagang gumigising, and yung mga evening person or yung mga late na nagigising. Circadian rhythms classify people as larks for morning and then owls for evening. Larks peak early, meaning mas productive sila sa umaga. And then owls naman, sila yung mas late na nagiging productive or mas alert. They struggle with morning shifts, while yung larks, they struggle with night shifts. Kasi nga, nagpipik na sila sa umaga and then yung owl, nagpipik na later kaya hindi sila nakakapag-peak dun sa morning shift kasi dun na sana yung cycle nila. The tendency to be an owl gets stronger through childhood and adolescence, peaking around age 20, a trend across all studies, culture, and species, likely driven by increased sex hormones. This clash leads to problems for teenagers who are more likely to get test scores, especially lower test scores, especially in morning classes, and more prone to engage in risky behaviors like alcohol use. Another example here is people in low-tech society, nakakatulog sila 3 hours after the sunset and wake at sunrise. So meaning mas may sleep sila dun compare sa mga in the big cities kasi nga the presence of electric light, especially in big cities, encourages people to stay up later. Next, mechanisms of the biological clock na inintroduce ni Kurt Tirchner as stated kanina. Biological clock, it is resistant to sensory deprivation, anesthesia, and brain damage, meaning it continues to work even when a person loses those. And for the suprachiasmatic nucleus or SCN, it is the central or body's main clock. For the suprachiasmatic nucleus or SCN, it is also known as the master clock. It is located above the optic chiasm or meaning yung supra is above. So if we're gonna base on the picture, diba, it is above the optic chiasm and parang between siya ng hypothalamus and optic chiasm. Function naman nito is it controls daily cycles of sleep and body temperature. It is the main driver of circadian rhythm for sleep and body temperature. Damage to the SCN makes rhythms erratic. The SCN is the clock itself. Its neurons continue to produce circadian rhythm even when it is isolated or transplanting SCN tissue with a 24-hour rhythm causes recipients to adapt that pace. Next naman, how light resets the SCN. Light resets the SCN via the retinohypothalamic pathway. Ito yung small branch of the optic nerve that largely bypasses the normal visual system, which is yung rod and cones, specialized in melanospin-containing retinal ganglion cells. Yung mga cell na yon, they respond directly to light and they're maximally responsive to short wavelength or yung blue light. They respond slowly, measuring the overall average intensity of light. This is why blue light from screens at night is so powerful, causing a phase delay. Meaning, yung blue light na yon, it keeps us awake. Next is the biochemistry of circadian rhythm. The SCN's molecular rhythm is based on feedback of per and tim proteins. Per is equal to period and tim is timeless, which promotes sleep. Based ito sa picture, yung per and tim, Na concentration, they are high during the day or may liwanag then drops down during night, while yung red naman is low at night, low in the morning and then high at night. First, per and team genes produce mRNA. mRNA is like a message na that tells the cell which protein to build or how to build it. Second, proteins accumulate at night, which it promotes sleep. Kaya nga dito sa red line, tumataas siya kasi nagpa-promote siya ng sleep kasi night na and walang light. Then third, rising levels inhibit their own gene expression. And for the fourth step, the light triggers chemical breakdown of TIM, resets its cycle. Kaya nga yung red, once na nag-hit yung sunrise, bumababa na siya kasi may light na. And it breaks down the TIM, which promotes wakefulness. Mutations in per genes can drastically alter sleep schedules, such as causing a circadian rhythm shorter than 24 hours. And lastly, from the rhythms of waking and sleeping, melatonin, as we all know, melatonin is the neurotransmitter responsible for sleeping. So the SEN signals pineal gland or the posterior to the thalamus. Pineal gland releases melatonin mainly at night kasi yun yung nagpapatulog sa atin. Its effects increases sleepiness 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. It signals night length, important for seasonal behaviors. Melatonin supplements should be taken early para ma-advance yung pagtulog natin. It also helps with jet lag. It also involves in puberty onset and seasonal adaptations. Next, in closing, sleep-wake cycle. To sum it all up, sleep-wake cycles are biologically enforced. It is governed by SEN hormones and light cues. And despite social schedules, the body dictates when we should rest.
Before, scientists discovered brainwaves and people thought that sleep was just the brain shutting down. But with the invention of the EEG or the electroencephalograph, the researchers found that our brain actually goes through different stages of sleep, and each with distinct brainwave patterns and functions. Let's start with stage 1. So, this is the latest stage of sleep and the transition from wakefulness to sleep. So our brain activity begins to slow down and it produces irregular low voltages of waves. Next is stage 2, which makes up about half of our total sleep. So in here, we can see two main brainwave patterns, sleep spindles and K complexes. So sleep spindles are short bursts of activity that help with the memory and learning, while K complexes are sharp waves that help block external disturbances. Then we enter slow wave sleep, so it is also known as deep sleep. So these stages are dominated by slow large amplitude delta waves. So our heart rate and breathing slow down, and this is when the body focuses on healing, growth, and restoring energy. So in stages 3 and 4, it is very difficult to wake up someone during this stage. Now in here, it shows how sleep looks different for young and older adults. Younger people spend more time in deep sleep, while the older adults have lighter sleep and they wake up more often. So basically, as we get older, we sleep less deeply, and this is based on schooling and Blue Weiss's study from 2015. After deep sleep comes REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. So in this stage, our eyes move rapidly while our brain becomes highly active and most of our dreams happen here. Interestingly, while the brain is awake like, our body muscles are paralyzed to prevent us from acting out our dreams. That's why it's also called paradoxical sleep. The brain is active but the body rests. During REM, we also see PGO waves. brain activity that travels from the pons to the geniculate nucleus to the occipital lobe, which contributes to the vivid images in our dreams. A complete sleep cycle from light sleep to deep sleep to REM lasts about 90 minutes. We repeat this cycle about 4 to 6 times every night. So early in the night, we have more deep sleep, while later in the night, we experience more REM sleep. Now let's talk about the brain parts that control these sleep stages. The reticular formation and the pontomesencephalon in the brainstem help maintain wakefulness and alertness. Next is the hypothalamus. It plays a dual role. It has cells that promote wakefulness by releasing histamine and orexin, and others that promote sleep. Third is the locus coeruleus, and the small area in the pons uses norepinephrine to keep our attention sharp, especially during emotionally charged situations. Lastly, the basal forebrain helps regulate both wakefulness and sleep through acetylcholine and GABA. Now let's talk about the neurotransmitters that affect our sleep-wake cycle. So these are basically brain chemicals that help control whether we feel sleepy or awake. First up, we have GABA or GABA aminobutyric acid. So it's like the brain's chill pill because it slows things down, reduces brain activity, and helps us relax. That's why a lot of sleeping pills actually boost GABA to help people fall asleep faster. Next is orexin, also known as hypocretin. This one keeps us awake and alert, but if you don't have enough orexin, your brain might suddenly fall asleep. That's what happens in narcolepsy. So some insomnia medications actually block orexin to help you rest. Then we have histamine. Yeah, the same one that involves in the allergies. So when histamine levels are high, you feel more awake. That's also why when you take antihistamines for allergies, you get sleepy because they block histamine in the brain. And finally, we have acetylcholine. So this one's pretty interesting because it's active both when we're awake and during REM sleep. So it helps with alertness, learning, and those vivid dreams during REM. Now let's talk about sleep disorders. So these are conditions that mess with how we sleep or how rested we feel after sleeping. First is insomnia. So this is when you just can't fall asleep or you keep waking up in the middle of the night. You're tired but your brain won't shut off. It can be caused by stress, anxiety, or even too much caffeine. And people with insomnia often feel sleepy, cranky, and unfocused during the day. Next is sleep apnea. This one's a bit scary because it's when our breathing actually stops for a few seconds while you sleep. Sometimes it's because your throat muscles relax too much. That's obstructive sleep apnea. Or your brain forgets to send the signal to breathe. That's central sleep apnea. Common signs for this are loud snoring, gasping for air, and feeling super tired even after a full night's sleep. Then we have narcolepsy. So this is when someone suddenly falls asleep during the day, like out of nowhere. It's caused by a lack of brain chemical called orexin, which helps us keep awake. So people with narcolepsy can also experience cataplexy or sudden muscle weakness, plus sleep paralysis and even vivid dreams. Is sleepwalking and night terrors. So this happen during deep sleep, not REM. Sleepwalkers might get up and walk around without even realizing it, while night terrors cause people, especially kids, to suddenly scream or panic in their sleep. Usually they don't remember anything like the next morning. And finally is REM, sleep behavior disorder, or RBD. Normally, our body is paralyzed during REM sleep, so we don't act out our dreams. But in RBD, that paralysis fails, so people might talk, punch, or even kick while dreaming. So this is risky because they can accidentally hurt themselves or their sleeping partner. To wrap up, sleep is not just like shutting down our body, so it's an active restorative process guided by complex brain mechanisms and chemical signals, because each stage has a purpose, whether it's repairing the body, consolidating memories, or preparing us for another day. Understanding these processes helps us appreciate the science behind a good night's rest and why getting enough sleep is vital for our health and well being.
Hello everyone. Now I'm gonna discuss the functions of sleep, why REM, and why dreams. Let's start with the functions of sleep. Sleep is one of the most important factors for both our physical and mental health. During sleep, our muscles relax, our metabolism slows down, and the brain performs a sort of housekeeping. That means it removes unnecessary connections while keeping the important ones. This helps in memory consolidation or strengthening what we've learned throughout the day. So what happens if we lack sleep? Lack of sleep can make us more stressed, worsen our mental health, and even cause poor performance or accidents just because we lack sleep. In fact, being sleep deprived is almost like being drunk. Our awareness and reaction time decreases. Even our immune system feels the effect of one sleepless night, which shows how essential sleep is for our overall health. So let's move on. Let's talk about sleep and energy conservation and its types. Aside from helping the brain, one of the oldest purposes of sleep from an evolutionary point of view is energy conservation. It is like cell phones that came from touchpads, keypads, and in the future it became complex machines like we have touch screens, Face ID, and so on. So sleep may have also evolved to serve many purposes, but originally it helped save us energy. Almost all living things, even bacteria, follow circadian rhythms or daily cycles of activity and rest. Fun fact about sleeping is that our body temperature drops and our muscles relax, which reduces energy use. When food is scarce, animals actually sleep more to save energy. This is like hibernation, which we'll talk about in the next slide. So let's start. Hibernation is like a long period of rest. An example is when an animal is in a cold weather and they cannot survive by living in it just because it's too cold. So what they do is they hibernate so that they can get long periods of rest that helps them survive cold seasons and lack of food. How this works? Their body temperature drops close to the temperature of the environment, making their heart rate slow down and brain activity decreases. A famous example of hibernation is when you look at bears. They only hibernate with only a small drop in temperature, while smaller animals like bats and squirrels lower it much more. Interestingly, hibernation slows down aging. Animals that hibernate often live longer than similar ones that don't. It also makes them less vulnerable to injuries or infections, showing that this deep sleep or hibernation has protective effects on the body. So now let's talk about species differences in sleep. Examples in nature are the Mexican cavefish. They can only sleep only 2 to 4 hours a day in darkness, while their relatives in normal waters sleep 30 plus hours a day. Some animals have special sleep abilities, like dolphins and whales who can sleep for weeks because they can sleep with one brain hemisphere at a time. Next are seals. They sleep half brain, sleep in water, while on land, they sleep fully. In short, animals adjust their sleep to survive and save energy depending on their needs and also depending on their environment, like the temperature, where they are, how alert they can be. So let's talk about sleep and memory and how they are connected. One of sleep's most important roles is in memory. Because if we don't get enough sleep, we perform worse in memory tasks the next day. That is why it is recommended that when we sleep after studying or even take a short nap, our brain strengthens what we learned. Because during sleep, especially during REM, a slow wave sleep, the brain replays learning related activity patterns in the hippocampus, which helps form long-term memories and build stronger neural connections. This explains why sometimes, after sleeping, we wake up with new ideas or solutions. So moving on, what is REM? And I'm gonna explain what are the functions of REM sleep. REM, or rapid eye movement sleep, makes about 1/5 of our total sleep, around 600 hours a year. REM is seen in mammals, birds, showing it's deeply rooted in evolution. Animals that sleep longer, like cats, spend more time in REM, while those that sleep less, like rabbits and sheep, spend less. Interestingly, even though REM is linked to memory, studies show that people taking antidepressants, which reduce REM sleep, still have normal or even better memory. So while REM plays a role in learning, it may also serve other biological functions that we don't fully understand yet. Now let's talk about dreaming. Also a biological perspective on dreaming. Why is it difficult to study dreams, you ask? Because all dreams information comes from self-reports, making it hard to be accurate since most of us forget our dreams. Almost every one of us forgets our dreams most of the time, given a day or two. There are two theories. The first one is activation synthesis hypothesis. It says that dreams are the brainwaves of making sense of random signals during sleep. Our brain then tries to connect these signals into a story. For example, dreaming of falling. Almost every one of us experience it while lying down. Why does it happen? Because it interprets our body stillness while lying down. But the weakness of this theory is that not all dreams match what's happening in the body, so it cannot be explained by everything. Now let's talk about the second theory, or called as neurocognitive hypothesis. It views dreams as a form of thinking that happens during sleep. It says that dreams start from the spontaneous brain activity related to our recent memories. During sleep, sensory input is low. Then brain gets little information from the outside world, so it creates images and stores freely. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and memory, is less active, explaining why dreams often feel random and why we quickly forget about them. Other areas like the visual cortex and amygdala become more active, which is why dreams often feel vivid and emotional.
And that's it for our group. Thank you for your time, and we're grads 3 and 4.